If you watch this channel for any length of time, you're probably aware of how pessimistic I am towards my homeland. And at this point, frankly, just kind of hopeless about it. Over the last decade, everything has gotten worse. I can't think of anything really in this country that's gotten better. The demographic situation, the cultural situation, the political situation. And it's not like it was good before, it was bad before. But it's gotten like turned up to 11 in terms of the rate at which society is changing for the worse. There's also more practical things like housing prices, transportation, food prices, crime in a lot of areas. But like, despite all of this, it wasn't until like maybe a year or two ago that I really started to feel like I was living in a foreign country. That I felt that like extreme sense of alienation and isolation that I'm sure a Japanese person would feel if they went to Belarus, if they moved to Belarus, or a French person felt that they moved to Japan. Just nobody's like you. Nobody has the shared cultural experience. No one speaks your language. Society is set up in a way that you just don't really understand. There's all these social cues. There's all this other stuff that's just kind of completely different than what you're used to. And honestly, from about 2 years ago, I've really started to feel that way. And keep in mind, I don't live in Toronto anymore. I live in Winnipeg. I live in like the crappy part of Canada, like the poor, high crime, like crappy part of Canada. And even here, the degree to which over the last decade things have rapidly changed is frankly astounding. So, what do I mean by feeling alienated? People probably think I'm exaggerating, and maybe I have a confirmation bias or something like this. But over the last couple of years, I find about 30 to 40% of people I meet, including like my job and at stores and stuff like that, cannot speak coherent English. They have maybe like a I don't know what the levels are, like a level one, maybe a level two, but they don't speak fluent English. And on top of that, if you've had to deal with particularly Indians, they also tend to speak very quietly and mumble. So you have like incoherent English combined with mumbling, combined with low volume. And so a lot of the time you're just kind of left trying to like piece together based on context what they might be telling to you. And I would say at this point that makes up about 50%, maybe more so, of people in the service industry. I can't even really order from. I just have to point to things or say a number or something like that. You know, when you used to go to Chinese restaurants or Japanese restaurants and the people there were from that country, and then you would have to just mark down all the stuff you wanted because they couldn't really speak or read English. It's almost like that in most stores that I go to these days. And it's just the experience is completely different. Like when I go to a Tim Hortons, and I don't know if other people have found this, basically there can be like 9 people there. I've counted up to 9, all Indian, of course, and they will just ignore you. Even if there's no line, they will ignore you for like 5 to 10 minutes, and they just will focus on the drive-through, and you just have an endless stream of Uber Eats coming in. And Uber Eats has like destroyed restaurants. It's really hard. Like even if I just want a coffee, I'm like not even I'm gonna get fries and a burger. It's summer drink days at McDonald's. I want to get a Coke Zero, or I want to get a iced coffee or something like that. And it can take a long time just because of how disorganized it is and how Uber Eats has just like completely destroyed it. And once again, even like, because some places, if you're lucky, they'll have like a touch screen, so then you can kind of like break the language barrier using that. But a lot of the time, once again, you're trying to like desperately convey what you're attempting to buy. And like I said, that's about 40 to 50% of the people that I come across, just in like the service industry. Now, at work, it kind of depends. I work at 2 different offices. One is generally speaking pretty good, and I'd say the vast majority of people there can speak coherent English. The other office I have to go to, I would say a majority of the staff can't really speak English. Like, I will, like, I was in a meeting a week or two ago with like 4 other recent immigrants. None of them could really I couldn't understand what they were even saying, and they were just kind of like mumbling and talking to each other in broken English, and I had no idea what was even going on, and I was trying to present and answer questions, and they were like on top of the just being quiet, mumbling, and not really being able to speak properly. They were like talking to each other in the corner and stuff like that. So yeah, I'll have scenarios, and this is very frequent, that I'll either be the only male or the only white person, or sometimes if I'm lucky, there's like a white woman, and there just won't be anybody else. And so I'll just be in a room with a bunch of people who don't speak my language, who don't have a similar cultural background, and it's just very alienating. It's just alienating to like go to work and you can't really talk properly with any of your coworkers. You're just kind of there. You have to communicate just through email. Um, you have to like severely limit your vocabulary. They don't get it. A lot of the time they don't get jokes or any kind of cultural reference. That's something I find in particular that I miss, is not being able to like reference things that happened in the 2000s or the 90s, or like movies or TV shows or stuff like that. Because most of these people were like in India for like a full decade after these events happened, and they have no idea really what you're talking about. So there's just like no shared cultural memory anymore. So it's just like, what do I even, well, if I could talk to these people, what would I even talk to them about? Um, Besides that, they tend to assimilate into like the Swipple, like middle class, ultra liberal culture, especially if they're female. And so even if they come from like a relatively conservative country, they'll almost immediately start adopting rainbow flags and pins and start getting on board as an ally and stuff like that. Or they'll decide that they're trans or something and jump on board with that. And even among like the other like white people here, such a large proportion of them now are either like BLTBBQ or adjacent to that. And for a lot of them, that's just become their entire identity. Like to a lot of people, I think like having anal sex is a bigger part of their identity than being Canadian. And they will just constantly talk about it and bring it up and make every conversation about it. I find it's the same thing for vegans and atheists. They just have to constantly bring it up. I very much do not find that with Christians or conservatives. The only Christians I find who bring that up, who will bring their faith up, are Filipinos and like Africans, and they get a pass for being religious because uh, they're like a backward culture that has been abused by colonialism or something like that. And it's not just the major cities. Like Toronto's a meme. Its motto is literally diversity is our strength. Victoria's a meme, but it's far beyond that. Once again, I live in Manitoba. I talk to people all the time. Rural Manitoba is getting flooded too. There's towns in rural Manitoba of like 1,000 people, and like 300 or 400 Filipinos will just show up over a 2 year period, and the local services will just collapse. There'll be no schools for the kids, and it's just a mess. Also, housing prices just continuously go up, and there's not really much that can be done because they aren't really willing to limit immigration. I think they did, but it's like we're gonna raise immigration by like 100% for 10 years, and then we're going to lower it by 20, and that's supposed to be some sort of big W or something like that. Beyond that, though, I'm just so tired of dealing with homeless people and drug addicts. You know, I used to have sympathy for drug addicts. I really did. I used to think, well, these people are slaves to their addiction. But they've made, like, especially in Canada, large portions of some of the major cities are just kind of like no-go zones, or you just have to step over them. And there's just so many meth heads. There's so many, like, people on fentanyl, and they're violent in a lot of cases. Like I have a friend who's been attacked multiple times. I know lots of people who get attacked by them, who get robbed by them. In a lot of areas now, you can't go out after dark because there's so many like drug addicts who will just jump you. And like frankly, it's depressing to just walk through the streets and see like all these like schizophrenic people yelling at stuff that's not there, with all their teeth falling out and open sores, and like they'll follow you, they'll start screaming at you and stuff like that, and it's unnerving. I don't know. You can say I'm a coward or whatever, but I know enough people who these drug addicts have snapped and just attacked them, and you don't know what kind of diseases they have if they start biting you. And I'm tired of everything smelling like piss and shit. Like it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable for a supposed developed country to act this way. Like when I was in Europe, they didn't seem to have this issue. In Prague, I saw one drug addict on the street, one, and here it's just everywhere. And it's not just because I live in the shittiest part of Canada. Like it's like this in Toronto. I'm sure it's like this all over the country, and it's not just. And in this case, it's mostly like First Nations people and white people who engage in this kind of thing. And I just know when I'm in stores, I will all the time now just see people who clearly have blown their brains out with drugs, and they can barely like even walk anymore. They can barely talk or think or anything like that. And this is just something that I kind of see more and more on a daily basis. And if like I kind of get why conservatives hate public transit so much, because it's just full of like drug addicts and like all of these just the refuse of society, and it makes you not want to go on it because you don't feel safe. And like once again, just the smell and the stench of the piss that wafts off a lot of this. And once again, I mean, you could say I'm an elitist, but I don't really think that this is like super high standards that I just want my cities to not smell like piss and shit, and you don't have drug addicts and schizophrenics all over the place attacking people. And like even the white people are just so naive and stupid and just unbearable. Like the one woman who's like, oh, well, I always make eye contact with them and I try to talk to them. And I think we have this culture of exclusion towards these marginalized people. And like, well, I don't know, lady, you probably live in some like gated community and you'll call the police on just about anybody if something happened. And honestly, in a lot of ways, the Karens are the worst. I know that Karen's like a racial slur now, but it just works. Like as I've said in the past, we rented out this. My company rented out a. I have to kind of be careful, and some of this might not make sense because I'm switching details around. We rented out like an older building. It like had kind of a neoclassical art design, and these Karens in my group went up and complained to like one of the staff and said that this was tacky, that this was offensive, that this was in a neoclassical design, that where was the indigenous representation, that they wanted to speak to his manager and they wanted to file a formal complaint that it was like this in the year 2025. And I do see this a lot where if there's anything, even if it's like is multicultural and there is like other perspectives included, they will just go and complain and bitch and report them and tattle on their manager like a fucking hall monitor. So like this is how I find myself in the year of our Lord 2025. When I was growing up, like 95% of the population could speak English. No, I can't communicate with probably over a third of the population. I remember seeing the occasional drug addict. I remember seeing the occasional homeless person. Now it's just the streets are flooded with them. You have these tents and like camps that are taking up areas in public parks. In Toronto, you have like rampant property crime. You have foreign investors, mainly from China, dramatically upping the cost of real estate. Housing prices are out of control. And like whatever corrective action that could be taken to try to fix any of these problems is just outside of the Canadian political scene. Like even if you're like the most right wing of the Conservative Party, you can't be anti-immigration. Like sometimes they'll occasionally tip their hat in that direction, but for the most part, no. Everybody other than maybe the Bloc Québécois is pro-immigration. The most they can do is have like base civic nationalism where it's like, well, we have to force the Muslims to integrate with the PAWS and have them become like upper middle class Karens. And that's like the big plan in order to deal with things. And once again, it's not as bad in Manitoba as it is in Ontario, but we are going through a very much a cultural revolution like phase where statues are being toppled, everything is being renamed, often with extremely flimsy reasons. A lot of the time, it'll just be made up. Someone told me the other day that the Dewey Decimal System was a racist colonial institution, and I'm like, you mean the content libraries? And they're like, no, just the system. We need like indigenous ways of library management or something like that. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, I get that they've filled libraries with all kinds of like disgusting materials, but I didn't realize like you can't even organize it anymore because that's apparently out. I know, like in Manitoba, they're going, well, the province burns down every year, but what we need is indigenous land management practices. I'm just like, that sounds like a really bad idea. Like, I guess like the First Nations people in like 1500 years ago or whenever it was understood like macro climate trends and how to do controlled burns in northern Manitoba to prevent smog from clogging the south. I think that is what is being conveyed, but I don't know. And maybe I'll just wind it off with like, complaining some more of the like First Nation stuff. It's I find very particularly in Manitoba. It's also a thing in Ontario. Now every meeting has to begin with a land acknowledgement, and you're often forced to participate in like Amerindian religious activities, like rituals or prayers to the Great Spirit or whatever like that. Kids have to participate in them in schools. Even if you can opt out, it's very much a case of your attitude has been noted, as they say in Dr. Zhivago. And honestly, for the most part, I think that the Canadian people want it this way. They either want it this way or they don't particularly mind it, or they're so concerned with being called racist they won't take any significant action to it. Canada is really the only Western country, as far as I can determine, that has no like counter revolution. That there's not like a significant proportion of the population that's even come up with like a fake right wing populist party that even has like a let's slow the rate of immigration movement. It's just completely checked out. I think that's also why you see so many people in these circles from Canada, just because they've given up on their country and there's really nothing that they can do about it. So they're invested in trying to help somebody else. Like America has way more. Like as bad as America is and all the issues it has, you will have mainstream politicians in America who are against illegal immigration. You'll have mainstream politicians in America who are against like post-birth abortion and stuff like that. You just don't have that in Canada. As I said, I think to me like the most what would be a demonstrative example of this is how Andrew Scheer ran for prime minister. And one of the major reasons he lost was because he said, as a practicing Catholic, I don't believe in abortion, but I understand it's a settled issue and it will not be brought up under my administration. And that was considered to be like an extreme far-right neo-Nazi position, because he wouldn't praise it and say it was awesome, and say we should have more abortion. That meant he couldn't lead the party. And now it's mostly just run by Indians anyways. Like pretty much anything else. So there's really no hope for this country. I don't even know if there's hope for maybe if Alberta and Saskatchewan secede. If they were to secede, I'd probably move there. Once again, though, I'm kind of a bit ambivalent about the whole Western separatism thing, because if the West included British Columbia, I don't think the politics would really change that much. But I could be wrong. But that's where we are in Canada in 2025. Just living in a completely alien society that's undergone a cultural revolution, not even over the last 20 or 35 years, but like the last 5 to 10 years that have completely altered a lot, like almost every aspect of life, and it continues to just kind of go on and on and on, and that is just kind of the reality that our elites have decided that you have to accept, and if you don't accept it, then you can be unemployed and die in the streets, or you can get arrested for hate speech or something like that, or you can get fired for pushing back, or if you only want to hire employees that speak one of the official languages. That's just where we are at the moment. And I don't think it's going to get better. And honestly, that's the only way I kind of get through the day, is just the recognition that there's nothing I can do. That as bad as I think things are, this is, I think, largely what the Canadian people want. And that is their value set. And I am just the outsider. I don't represent a significant portion of the Canadian population. You know, I'm just going to end with a quote the Mad Monarchist once had. Someone asked him about the United Kingdom, and he said, "At the end of the day, people have the government they want. If the people of the United Kingdom wanted something different, they would have something different. The fact that they have the current system they have is indication at some level that they either support it or acquiesce to it." But that's my rant about Canada in 2025. I'd say I hope you enjoyed it, but you probably did not. I know I didn't, but it's good to get this off my chest. So God bless everybody and try to stay safe out there.